we had the opportunity to meet with Guenter Schroeder, a German scholar and expert on Horn of Africa matters.
Yes, Guenter, how does it develop Sabe's activities in the field and outside after he cut his relationship with ELF and EPLF, Israel's group?
After the ELF-PLF of Sabe was expelled from Agadat and its environs in October 1978, the Sabe organization basically was limited to the diaspora, which it had main base in Sudan, in Kassala and Khartoum. It had a minimal military presence around Tessenay, Omaja in the border area, just a pocket where they had a few hundred fighters. And the main activities of Sabe were politically and financially, in the sense that he tried to organize funds to pay his soldiers and to pay for his running costs, for the offices he had. He maintained in most Arab states, he maintained his official bureaus, representations. But inside Eritrea, he was very limited. He had no organized underground presence or network, just individuals who might be supportive of his ideas. And when the civil war between the ELF and the EPLF broke out in August 80, then was interrupted by a ceasefire in November 1980, and then resumed again in July or August 81, and ended with a victory of the EPLF over the ELF and the total withdrawal of the ELF from Eritrea. The ELF-PLF of Sabe was a helpless spectator. They did not comment much on it. They did not have a hand in it. They did not take sides. So I met Sabe actually while the conflict between ELF and EPLF was going on, or had just entered into the phase of ceasefire in November, December 1980, in the first round. So he did not comment much on it. He said his only comment was it was inevitable because they could not accept each other, and any talk of unity.
They couldn't accept him also as well.
Yeah, they could not accept me, and they could not accept each other. And any talk of unity by the one side was
fake.
Was fake because they considered their unity proposals were tools to dominate the other.
Definitely.
So, and when the ELF was driven out of Eritrea in August 81, and they descended into a very bitter infighting, and finally broke apart in March 82 after a military coup led by Abdallah Idris, then the Sabe saw an opportunity to bring himself again into play. By that time, his main interest was to re-enter the political game, Eritrean political game, to be accepted as a kind of important player.
Was he at the time was an important player? Was a need for Sabe also after 81, after ELF escapes from the field?
Well, the problem is Sabe never realized that with the ascendancy of the EPLF, the time and the need and the time for politicians like himself had passed. Yeah. The game, the political military game in Eritrea
was over.
Took place on a different level, had a different quality for which he was not really fit. He was a political entrepreneur, and to a sense a political schemer, as a diplomat, but as a successful guerrilla war, you don't win on the merits of your diplomatic silver tongue alone. Yeah, at a certain stage that was necessary and needed and extremely important for the survival of the Eritrean revolution. But at the stage in the late 80s, certainly, or even in the early 80s, certainly not. Yeah, he could still have made the positive contribution. Yeah. Let's say if he had allied with either the ELF or the EPLF and they used his talents to drum up support for these organizations. Yeah? In this sense, he would have been useful, but not vital for them.
Okay, Guenter. So he wasn't successful in the field in Eritrea, and he was not successful also to build his own organization. So how it and his political activities after the 1981, and that was the time which was the policy of the EPLF, one organization, one field.
Well, that always had been the position of the ELF and the EPLF, basically. Yeah, that in the Eritrean field there should be only one organization, one army. Yeah. Now, Osman Saleh Sabe, even before the ELF fell apart, in the diaspora, in the exile in Sudan, he suffered a serious split when a substantial part of his organization, which had the links to Iraq, certain Baathist leanings, broke away and formed their own organization. Yeah? So that reduced his let's say, the number of fighters he had and the number of active guards, practically the organization and his military was split in the middle. Yeah? So that was a serious weakening. Now you had 5 organizations in the Eritrean, the ELF, the EPLF, the EDM, which was also falling apart, and the 2 halves of the sub-organization. Now, when Abdallah Idris made his military coup, Sabe saw a chance to re-enter the game. He offered the elements which remained loyal to Ahmed Nasser, who had been imprisoned at that time by Abdallah Idris, the faction of the ELF, which continued under the acronym ELF Revolutionary Council. He offered the Revolutionary Council to take shelter with his organization. He offered them, you come, you join us, and we protect you against Abdallah Idris and against the Sudanese. Yeah, because the Sudanese were also arresting some of these cadres. Yeah. The elements of the ELF Revolutionary Council leadership loyal to Ahmed Nasser, who were not imprisoned, were led by Dr. Habde, Tesfaye, and he accepted this proposal. He joined the Sabe group, but then he soon realized that it was not a fair deal.
You mean Sabe?
Sabe did not offer them a fair deal. Yeah, they did not really participate in any decisions of organizational political decisions. Yeah, it was not a partnership based on equality, but Sabe pretty much dominated the whole thing. Yeah, and I mean, Sabe, he was running his organization as a feudal, as a fief. He was ruling from the top, and that's it. Yeah, no not even democratic centralism. It was simply political,
and that was not convenient for Dr. Habde.
That was not convenient for Dr. Habde and the others. Yeah, so at least they wanted to have a say. So after a few months, they separated again. they continued to work underground, and when Ahmed Nasser and the other imprisoned leaders were freed, they joined this faction and they built up the ELF Revolutionary Council as a viable organization again. Sabe did not have a relationship with Abdallah Idris at first, and he did not have any relationship with the ELF, the SAGEM, which embraced the bulk of the fighters who had fled to Sudan and were encamped
and back to Eritrea,
and then went back to Eritrea. Yeah.
Guenter, I think you gave me a link for that. But you made Sabe after between 81 until his end of his life.
Yeah.
And how many times?
I came yearly to Sudan, yeah, and every time I was in Sudan, I met him 1 or 2 times, yeah. So I met him regularly.
Okay.
And I followed the developments of his organization, yeah. So what actually happened to us after a few months after his mismarriage with the ELF Revolutionary Council broke apart again, he agreed to a proposal basically pushed by the Saudi Arabians. Yeah? The Saudi Arabians wanted to forge an Eritrean organization, a strong Eritrean organization, conservative, pro-Islamic as an organization in opposition to the EPLF. So they had approached the Abdallah Idris faction. They had approached the Sabe, they had approached the faction, the Legion Zaria, the Revolutionary Committee, the Baasist, and pressurized them, promised them, paid subsidies to them, that they agreed to form an organization. The 3 organizations, they took their sweet time to come to an agreement, but they basically accepted the idea. And ultimately, in January 85, I think, they officially established the ELF United Organization.
Sumawudu, okay.
Sumawudu in Tigrinya. And but again, the personalities involved, Sabe, Abdallah Idris, Hassan Assad from the ELF National Committee, ELF PLF National Committee, this Baasist, each one of them wanted to be the boss of the United Organization. And when it came to merging the military forces, it was obviously, as Abdallah Idris, he wanted to dominate the military forces of all 3. Yeah? He had the most fighters, and the others had much less fighters. So it was clear he, respectively, his military as a commander, I think Mohammed Massoud, Haseb, they wanted the leadership of the military. Yeah? When it came to merging the officers in the Arab world, the different officers, yeah, there was a very, very bitter struggle between the representative from the different organizations who should be heading the respective office. Yeah? In Saudi Arabia, 3 officers merging into one who will be the boss. Yeah? So, and these power struggles, that was also not only about power, it was also about, let's say, income. These people received
maybe also a political identity of each organization.
Well, the political identity up to a point, yeah. But basically it was the power and money.
Okay.
Because by that time, the external cadres of the ELF, of the various ELFs, they had made a career out of their activities. They were paid by the organization, they were living by the organization, yeah. So losing the position means losing income. And anyhow, within less than 1 year, the Sumo Vutup became a very, the Ansumo Vutup, a very disunited organization, and then it's again split 3 ways.
It's fragile, okay.
Yeah, it broke up into 3 factions, resuming their former names, both ELF and the other one the National Council. And the faction of Sabe did not as the ELF PLF, but they called themselves ELF United Organization or ELF PLF United Organization. They used both. And but the interesting thing is the split was not exactly along the lines like they had entered into the marriage. Some members of the Abdallah Idris faction, they remained with Sabe. Members from the Sabe faction remained with Abdallah Idris. Members from the Sabe faction went with the National Council, with the Baasist. Some from the Baasist faction remained with Sabe. And so there was a certain shuffling around, yeah. And but at the end of the day, the 3 organizations resulting from the split of the United Organization were weaker than they had been before they entered into the United Organization.
But each organization was weaker than before.
Than before, yeah.
Okay.
Because practically with every split which happened in the Eritrean arena in the 80s, a certain number of members from the splitting organization, they fell by the wayside.
So, frustration, okay.
Frustration, they gave up, they returned to a non-political civilian life, yeah.
But Guenter, I would like to insist in Sabe's biography, and he gave me a lot of input at his political activities. But as a person, I think he was destroyed after 81, and after this period also he started also a new start to reorganize many groups in one organization, and it wasn't successful also. But anyway, how was his personality developed after these occasions?
Well, you see, the problem with the Sabe was, as we had discussed before, he never really understood what was happening in the field. And he never really understood the development taking place among the younger generation of fighters, their politicization, their political orientation. He was not a person who would develop or would follow ideologically founded, based as a political program, yeah. And he had the greatest difficulties to understand as a Baasists or the people, the EPLF people, yeah, with their the orientation, yeah. Even the concept of the EPLF, protracted People's War, marrying national liberation with social revolution, yeah, that was alien to him, yeah, like the backside of the moon. So, and he was important, and he was running the show in the 60s. But he never really came to terms that the need of the Eritrean liberation struggle for people like him had changed.
And he never gave up, and he, of course he was disappointed.
Yeah, he was disappointed. So he when he created with the Beirut Agreement, he had hoped to come back to a center stage. but he did not really understand the real meaning of this agreement, the really importance. Yeah, the people in the field were running the show, and they needed someone to represent them outside until they could do it themselves. Yeah. For Isaias and his people, it was quite clear that the agreement with the group around Sabe, the foreign mission, that was a temporary agreement until things in the field have stabilized and until they could build their own other organization also abroad. Yeah. And Sabe never understood that. He thought he had returned to the center field, and based on this misconception, he overplayed his hand in 75 when he, unilaterally, without any discussion with the field command, the real power in the organization, negotiated a unity treatment with the ELF. He had clearly overplayed his hand, as he did not have a mandate to do that. He was not the chairman of the organization. He was the head of the foreign mission, backup.
Was difficult actually to lead the organization from outside of the country. That was unpractical.
Yeah, well, that is one thing, yeah. But he had never really understood that the field command was the real power in the EPLF. So, and you see, his motivation after 75, after the break with the EPLF, after he split from the EPLF, was basically regaining some of the place of importance within the Eritrean liberation struggle, because he himself felt that he is important for the Eritrean liberation struggle and that he deserved to play an important role. Yeah? And he was struggling to get back to a place in the sun, in a way, and he became more frantic in this, especially then after he had suffered this reverse, as being kicked out of the field, and then as trying to split the ELF, as being kicked out of the field, suffering a split in his own organization, then going to bed with the Abdallah Idris and his former colleagues from the National Council, and then splitting again,
okay. But psychologically, how he accepts this development around regarding his political activities among the Eritrean politics. But did he give up before he died, or he continued to work in this stage?
You see, if he had not had this as a mishap during his nasal operation in Cairo, he went to Cairo to have some nasal polyps removed, and something went wrong during the operation, a heart failure or something with the anesthesia, anything. He was not in a bad health condition as far as I know. And anyhow, he died unexpectedly and fairly young, still in his 50s. And
how old was he when he died?
I think in his 50s. And so he probably would have continued to scheme and to unite and to disunite and try whatever the opportunity offers himself to bring himself into it. And he, he was active in a sense, you see, after the Sumo Wudub split up again, and he had his own organization, with some new additions. For example, Saleh went with him, from Abdallah Idris to Sabe. So Saleh is a strong man, who had some substance and some followers, others. So, and he was instrumental in 85, 86, uncovering the relationship of Abdallah Idris with the Ethiopians. It's
difficult to understand for me, unfortunately. Sabe was a figure for Arabization of Eritrea on the eyes of Ethiopian government that time. And was he really following these Arabic communities' ideas to bring to Eritrea?
Well, Sabe was neither the.
I mean, Eritrea is not the community of Arab world. So
yeah, no, Sabe was certainly a Muslim, but not an Islamist. Mm-hmm. He was, in terms of social ideology or social behavior, he was conservative, but not an Islamist.
And not Arabist also.
And also not an Arabist in the sense that he was pushing for a radical, rabid, intensive Arabization of Eritrea. Yeah. He, as a Muslim Eritrean, and as such a Muslim...
Let's say a Muslim conservative person.
A Muslim Eritrean scholar, he naturally felt part of the worldwide Islamic Ummah. And he had these cultural affinities to the Arab world, yeah. He fluently spoke Arabic, yeah. He wrote in Arabic, he published books in Arabic. But he was not one of those who made a burning ideological issue out of it. And if need be, he presented Eritrea as part of the Arab world to the Arab heads of state. Yeah. But to the Chinese, he played the cards that Eritrea is part of the third world. To the Cubans, he played it up that Eritrea is part of the
socialist world. Okay.
Yeah, of the third world, the inclining towards the revolution. Yeah. So whichever way he adopted ideologically, in a sense, in his presentation, he was like a chameleon. He adapted to his context. Yeah? But as a person, he did not have, according to my perception from the various talks I had with him, he did not have, let's say, a deep-seated political ideology.
Even Arabization.
Whether it is Arabization or Islamization or, let's say, Muslim conservatism, and not in the sense of a political ideology, yeah? Or liberal democracy. He certainly was not a Democrat in this sense. Yeah? He knew. He probably would have followed, let's say, the formal tenets of democracy in Eritrea, yeah? Having parties, having elections or so, but he didn't have a real understanding how democracy works. Yeah, for that he was too much of also authoritarian, a benevolent authoritarian patriarch.
Thank you very much. Guenter, I would like to finalize my interview with you, and maybe you can give me a conclusion of Sabe at the end, how it ended. You tried to meet him, and he promised you also to see you again after his trip to Egypt.
Yeah.
So how does it end?
Well, I had made arrangements with him to meet him when I you see, in 87. I had been inside the field of the EPLF, and I had made arrangements before I went inside to meet him.
In 87.
In 87, yeah, to meet him when he comes back from Cairo and I come back from the field. Yeah. And I came back I was in Khartoum. I spent some days there. And I was waiting for him to come from Cairo, and I had gone to his house, and they had informed me, Mohammed Zaid-Naud actually, they had informed me that he is in Cairo for his operation, and then came the news that he has died there. Yeah. So I wanted to discuss with him his take on what is going on in the field, how he views how he analyzes the situation in the field from his perspective. The EPLF had just survived the major Ethiopian offensive in '85, Bahanagasha offensive from July to October '85, and it was the kind of recuperating and then trying to move out again. At the same time, the EPLF was trying to invite the other Eritrean organizations to join the EPLF. The ELF Revolutionary Council had several missions to the field of the EPLF. Mohammed Berhan Blatter, he was the head of some of these delegations. Other smaller factions were discussing with the EPLF. So the EPLF had given up its policy of totally ignoring them, or even before condemning them, bedeviling them, but they offered olive branches, making it quite clear that they will the EPLF is offering, you join us, we will swallow you, and no hard feelings over the past, but your existence as an independent organization has to come to an end if you want to have anything any role to play. That was what they offered. A merger, not even a merger, an absorption without recrimination about past conflicts. Which was important to a sense. When the EPLF offered to all these, for example, the former ELF fighters, they could join, and nobody would take any action punishment against them for former conflicts with the EPLF. That was, as far as things go, it was a fairly fair offer.
Definitely. But that was unfortunately his life ending at the end of 50s age. Guenter, thank you very much for your time and for this information. And I think he would love you when the people of Eritrea would love you. Just you gave this impression and he gave this information.
No, I just wanted to add something. You see, I met them over 7 years, and we formed a friendly relationship.
The last 7 years, okay.
Yeah, from 80 to 87. And it was quite clear for him that I have a different political orientation and ideas. And that my support in the Eritrean arena was for the EPLF at that time, but that I was open-minded enough to also listen and to talk with the other organizations, not being of a closed mind like many other friends of the EPLF, who never went to Sabe to talk with him or so. And I came to respect him as a person. As a politician, I had issues with him, but as a person, I found him agreeable, I found him more agreeable than some of the iron heads of the EPLF as a human beings, He was an agreeable human being, an interesting person, and I respected what he had done also for the Eritrean Revolution in the 60s. And I was discussing with him as a particular some of his activities in the 80s. I openly discussed with him whether that was really the best way of going about things. And he never took offense. He said, "Well, you have a good opinion. You know my country well." I said, "Yes." So for that, I respect him. And I will always respect him. And I personally, I'm of the opinion, if a person, none of these political leaders in liberation struggles. They are neither Boy Scouts nor angels. They are human beings with good sides, with bad sides, with strengths, with weaknesses. But on his life balance, he made a highly valuable contribution to the Eritrean liberation struggle. And if a person deserves to have a statue as a somewhere in Asmara, it should be Osman Saleh Sabe.